Hi, my name is Alicia and I'm an alcoholic. I don't know if you can see on camera, but I'm broken out. I'm about to tell you why. I don't have any structure for this video. I didn't take any notes. So if I sound like I'm rambling at any point, I apologize. Since I have nothing to lose with this channel and I'm just kind of creating to create, to express myself, to hear myself talk, it might be nice and it may help somebody to just create a video diary. Because I'll be honest, I've been going through some stuff. I've gone through a lot of stuff and I kind of want to talk about it. So here we go. Like I've been saying, if you're a person out there that's not me and you're watching, thank you so much for watching. It really does mean a lot to me. I'm not creating these videos for views at this point. It's just kind of fun and cathartic for me to get things off my chest, have a little fun in editing, and just talk, quite frankly, because if there's anything I do well, it's talking. Always have. That's the only thing I ever got in trouble for in school. So here lately, I've been having a lot of struggles with anxiety and some difficulty with depression at times. So I kind of want to talk about where this all started with me, as well as where I am today. Quite frankly, I'm exhausted this evening. My body hurts, I'm tired, but emotionally, I'm not feeling too bad. So I wanted to take advantage of this time and sit down and film something. I'm making a conscious decision to be very vulnerable right now and maybe put too much out there, but something tells me it's worth it. So I want to start with anxiety because that is something that I've had a very long-standing and complicated relationship with. I'm sure I felt it at some point when I was a kid, a teenager, depression as well. But at that age, whatever I felt, I didn't have a name for. And I wasn't like a troubled teen. I think, lived a pretty healthy, well-adjusted childhood and teen years. But where this all kind of started for me, where I was very aware that I am a person who experiences anxiety and very heightened anxiety and panic disorder, was when I realized that I'm an alcoholic. Hi, my name is Alicia and I'm an alcoholic. I have been sober for about 7.5 years now, and I am proud of that, but I guess the point of this is to say that it's not always easy. And I'm not going to get really into my story, as we call it in the AA community, but I will say that I really started to know anxiety around the time I realized that I had a problem with alcohol, which was probably during the latter half of my college years. And then things got worse out of college. But at that time, my hangovers started to morph. And instead of feeling headachy and generally sick, I started waking up feeling terrified and shaky, which progressed later to me waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning when my alarm wasn't going off until, say, 7 o'clock. And I would just be in a straight panic. I saw a doctor, that was around 2008. I saw a doctor and learned that this is anxiety. This is what anxiety looks like. Of course, in this case, I'm talking about alcoholism-induced anxiety. These are withdrawals I was experiencing. So it's important to note that distinction. And off and on, I was prescribed medications to help cope with my anxiety. Now, I was never one to abuse those medications, especially while drinking. That was just never my bag. So yeah, I definitely knew anxiety from the scope of withdrawing from alcohol, which is hell. That's a living hell. And then over the years, I made a few attempts at getting sober, racking up time spans between 2 months to a year and a half. And I finally got sober, I believe, for good on October 3rd, 2012. And I was so excited. I thought I had my last panic attack. I thought I had my last anxiety attack. And don't get me wrong, life sober is so much better than living life under the control of a drink. But because it's better doesn't mean it's always easier. One thing I often hear in AA meetings is, my worst day sober is better than my best day drinking, which I'll be honest, just simply isn't true for me. So when I got sober, I did attend meetings. I will say I'm not the best alcoholic in that I don't attend meetings regularly. I attend them occasionally, and that's going to be important later in this diary. But I soon learned that I was still a person living with anxiety despite being sober and happy. So off and on, more on than off, I've been prescribed medication for anxiety. And over the course of these past 7.5 years, there have been some months where I feel great. I really don't experience much anxiety, and I think, hey, maybe I'll come off my meds on my own. Not something I'm recommending. You should always, 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 always consult your doctor for something like that. Nothing about what I'm saying, nothing about my history around medication and substances is something I'm advising to anyone, except maybe the parts about getting better. But yeah, some months I would feel great and I would think, hey, I'm ready to talk to my doctor about coming off of this medication. And some months, not necessarily because I'm going through anything specific, but some months I would just feel like, dude, like I'm feeling a lot more anxious than usual. I don't know if I can come off this medication. So for the past 7.5 years, I have been consistently on this medication, which is an anti-anxiety medication and a depressant. And to describe what anxiety feels like for me, it's not the same as stress. There are some days where there's just too much to do and not enough time to do it. There are some days where my relationships are just not harmonious. There are some days when things just are not going my way. And I don't really link those times to anxiety because that's a different feeling. For me, those days are usually stressful, and that's something that's entirely different. Anxiety for me is largely physical, a physiological feeling. The primary symptom that I have these days would be knots in my stomach. It feels like someone is just churning my stomach. At the same time, I feel like there's a heavy weight on my chest. Like I cannot get a good breath in for the life of me. And when it's really bad, I feel shaky. And of course, I can't focus in those moments. And just having a general feeling of fear and terror. So that's what anxiety feels like for me. Now, rewinding a little bit, although I knew anxiety very well for many, many years, I was never somebody who experienced depression. It's not something I understood. And in order to talk about that, I have to allude to some very important things that happened in my life in 2016. And all of these things that I'm talking about, addiction, the things that happened in 2016, which, spoiler alert, involves death. I'm not going to get too in the weeds about those things because this is really about my experience with anxiety, depression, and a little bit about addiction. But these in and of themselves are pretty complex and lengthy stories. So I want to keep it brief. In 2016, I got news from my mom's youngest sister, who actually was raised more like a cousin or a sister to me. She was somebody that I looked up to my entire childhood. She was beautiful, hilarious, charismatic, intelligent. She was everything that I wanted to be, that I wanted to grow up and become. And I do think I got a lot of traits from her, and I'm so grateful for that. But at the beginning of 2016, actually almost exactly 4 years ago on February 5th, I heard from Lupe. She had stage 4 cancer all over her body. It was so aggressive that the doctors could not find the origin of the cancer. And I would say that hit me like a ton of bricks, but it was my first experience with something this heavy in my family. And I just didn't know what to think. I think initially my mind resorted to, this is gonna work out. This is gonna work itself out. Everything does. Everyone in my family is alive and kicking and well. This is gonna work itself out. But it didn't. And she passed away exactly 2 months later, leaving behind a 33-year-old husband and 3 children under the age of 6. And that was tough. Obviously, of course it was. Not to downplay the weight of something like that, but I did feel grateful that we had a couple of months, my family had a couple of months to experience kind of this anticipatory grief and say our goodbyes. And so in the following months, I would reflect on her death, her life, the impact all of this had on me, the impact her life had on me. And almost exactly 6 months later, I found out that my brother had passed away. I was 30, he was 28. And what that did to me in the moment is something that I just simply don't have the time to go into right now, nor the emotional capacity. In fact, it might be silly for me to be talking about any of this right now, but here we are.
Hello, it's me in editing. I am homesick, so I may sound a little funny, but I wanted to pop in and point out, here's Oliver again. Hi, Oliver. He's taking care of me. I wanted to point out that I recognize that it does look like and sound like I am glossing over my brother's death or the details of it, and I am. And I alluded to this in the video, but I feel like that story entails a lot more, and I think would require a lot more, not just thought and planning, but also emotional strength. But to point out what I think is important, hello, buddy. To point out what I think is important, you should know that my brother's death was sudden. So that really does have some important implications about what it does to the mental health of those that are close to this person. And for me, one of the results of that was being diagnosed with acute grief and post-traumatic stress disorder, which PTSD is still on my list of conditions, disorders, whatever you want to call what I have from a medical perspective. But yeah, without going into all the details of what happened at that time, that's what's important to know for now.
I'd always imagined that coping with the death of a loved one would be very heavy, sad, desperate, heartbreaking, but I didn't realize a death in the family could cause such complicated problems with one's mental health. Oh, and I should note that my brother died 4 days before my 4-year anniversary, sobriety anniversary. So you can imagine those were probably 4 of the most difficult days in my life. And they were. I got there though. But as time progressed, especially over the next year or so, trying to focus on work and getting back into the swing of life. If you hear jingling, that is because my cat Atticus is playing with a toy, and he can be insane sometimes. Anyway, I had a really difficult time focusing at work. I was feeling anxious a lot at work, and it's worth noting that where I worked at the time was a very toxic environment, and that's probably something I'll want to talk more about at some point, but I didn't really have the space to grieve my brother's death. Or Lupe's death. My brother's name is Robert. I started attending a grief support group, a grief group therapy type of thing at a center that specifically focuses on grief, loss, healing, that sort of stuff. And I still go there for therapy every week. I made some fantastic friends there too. I am so grateful for that place. But sometime around, I would say a year or so after my brother's death, I noticed that I was so tired all the time. I was drinking a lot of energy drinks, which I know is not good for me. My mother was very concerned. I was concerned, but I remember drinking 7, 8, 9 energy drinks in a day just to stay awake, just to function. And then that worried me because one of my friends from high school had died a few years earlier in a situation that involved drinking too many energy drinks, which I'm not going to talk about that. That's not my story to tell, but it is something that worried me, and it is something I thought about. But the point is that I was really just tired all the time, and lacked motivation to really do anything. I'm usually a busybody, very type A, sometimes kind of neurotic if I'm being honest, but also very creative. When I'm in my element, I'm the kind of person who doesn't have enough hours in the day to do all the things she wants to do. Depending on what my flavor of the week is, I might be going to town drawing, singing. No, I'm not a great singer. Trying to pick up things like clay working and a ukulele, thinking I might get good at a particular skill that I never did, but I tried. I just like to stay busy with creative projects. And at that time, there wasn't much that I wanted to do. There wasn't much that I felt like I could do. And so I spoke with the psychiatrist at this grief center who diagnosed me with depression and put me on an antidepressant. I'm sure many medical professionals would say that it was a placebo effect, but I noticed my energy levels picking up within a week, I would say. I really started to kind of feel back to normal and really kind of put my life together again. And things were relatively good. Now, this past summer, I went through a pretty big change in my home life. That was heartbreaking at times. At other times, it was good. But then I started to notice myself slipping back into this fatigue, lethargy, lack of interest. So, kind of as I described anxiety as this like very physiological thing for me, the same is true for depression with me. It is very physiological. Of course, that's not to say that my thoughts and my brain are fun places to be all the time. They're not. But particularly, I was feeling very fatigued, achy at times, not motivated to do much of anything, and relying a little too much on caffeine just to get me through the day. And around November of last year, around my birthday, I would say, I made some changes to my medication. And of course, things in my life started to change as lives go. And I started to feel pretty good again. I would say pretty good most of the time. I like to think that I'm a generally happy person who's just dealt with a lot of shit in her life. And I don't think one would guess just by making small talk with me. So I was feeling better. I talked to my new primary care physician a couple months ago. I was in a good place. She was concerned about how long I had been on my anti-anxiety medication, and we made a decision together to start titrating me or weaning me off of this medication, which went great for like 2 months, I would say. And then something in the past couple of weeks hit me like a ton of bricks. At first, this thing started happening where I would wake up a few times a week in a panic, and I would have no clue as to why. I just knew it was happening and that I hated it. The worst way to start your day, it really is. Most of us think that the worst part of our day is hitting that snooze button or turning off our alarm and being sleepy. And I really actually started to miss that feeling of being sleepy in the morning because I would wake up just heart pounding, feeling like I was out of breath, knots in my stomach. And that's just how I was starting my day. And on top of that, I get headaches a lot, migraines too. So a few weeks ago, I noticed that the headaches were happening almost every day. Waking up with a panic attack, that was happening almost every day. And then it progressed. And in the past couple of weeks, I've noticed that I, most days, will have nearly all day anxiety. Waking up in a panic, getting ready for work, anxious, going to work, anxious, trying to focus and do a good job, anxious, making small talk with people with knots in my stomach, interacting with friends and family, feeling out of breath, and really trying to go about my normal life, getting up, getting dressed, doing my makeup, going to work, working out, being present for my friends and family while feeling this way. And I mean, I guess you could say that I've had a lot of practice. And then there's a day here or there when I wake up and I don't have that panic. In fact, I think, oh wow, today might be a good day. I feel relaxed. I feel sleepy waking up. And I've learned here recently that there are some days that I wake up and I just am depressed all day, which means largely that I can't get out of bed. And I've heard people say that a lot when they talk about depression, when you can't get out of bed. It really is a physical thing. Like the bed has a hold on my body when I feel this way.
And I think it's important to note here that this recent debilitating depression that I've been experiencing has thankfully happened only over the weekends. I've had some down days before, but I haven't missed work because of depression.
Like my body feels like it is made of lead and I just cannot move it. I still have all these things that I want to do with my day. So I'll muster the energy to move my body for, say, 5 minutes at a time, to do some dishes, go back to my bed, rest, get up, fold some clothes, go back to bed, rest, and so on and so forth. But I don't have it in me to go out into the world and do anything fun or otherwise. I don't have a ton of interest in talking to other people. And sometimes I do feel pretty sad and lonely. And that happened to me this past weekend. I stayed in bed for a whole day. I napped, which I don't do. I know it sounds like not a big deal, but that's so out of character for me. Every now and then, occasionally, I would just start bawling. I would just cry. Oh, and then I experienced something entirely new, which was depression and anxiety coexisting within my body at the same time, which I'd heard of before, but could not conceptualize what that was like. I always thought you're either up or down. Turns out you can be both, and that is not fun. So I'd have these moments where I'd kind of break down just sobbing. And most recently, I kind of knelt down on my floor. I think I was looking for something under my bed, and I just started sobbing, and praying and asking for a miracle. And in my mind, that miracle meant, dear God, please let me wake up tomorrow and not feel depressed or anxious. I can handle feeling stressed. I can handle feeling sad. I can handle feeling bored, what have you, worried as I usually am. But I wanted some sort of reassurance that I was not going to live anxious and or depressed all the time, every day. And call it an act of God, call it my mind at work, and I'm sure it's a combination of a lot of things, but I started to feel like I might be okay that night, relatively. I felt like things were going to be all right, that I would get through this time. Which brings us to today. Today's Monday. I woke up without a panic attack, which was just glorious. I was so happy to be too sleepy to get out of bed this morning. That was a really good feeling and something that I felt that I'd been taking for granted for so long. And for most of the day, I didn't feel too bad. Of course, the wave of anxiety did hit me all at once in the afternoon around the time that I was about to go work out. And I decided to push through and actually move forward with my workout instead of excusing myself from it, because I thought that this might help me to feel better, to get myself moving, to get my legs moving especially. And I think it might have helped. But more importantly, something really special happened. And I need to kind of go back in time here. I think I mentioned that I'm not a good alcoholic in that I don't go to meetings every day like I should. I don't go to meetings every week. I go occasionally. I tend to go to meetings when I feel hopeless, when I feel that nothing is working to help me stay sane. I try to go for anniversaries to celebrate. And in general, when I really just want to make sure that I'm taking care of myself from so many different angles. So this past October, I did go to a meeting nearby to celebrate my 7-year anniversary, which was amazing. I vaguely remember not feeling great that day and opening up to the meeting about that, but at the same time, feeling really good about celebrating 7 years sober. The whole room cheered for me. I got hugs. I happy cried. It was a good time. And there was a young woman at this meeting that shared that it was her first meeting, that she wasn't very clear as to whether or not she was sober or had racked up any amount of hours sober, but she expressed kind of a desire to know sobriety personally. And I so felt for this girl. She seemed so young, so beautiful, so sweet. And I hurt because I remembered being 22, 23, an active alcoholic, and people saying to me, you have so much to live for. You're so young and so beautiful and so smart. And I remember at that time thinking, what does this have to do with anything? I feel like crap. I need something to make me feel better. It doesn't matter. My beauty is not going to make this feel better. Neither is my age, my intelligence, etc. And here I am thinking the same thing that other people used to say to me. I'm thinking this about this young woman at this meeting. And I so remember wanting to talk to her after the meeting. And I don't remember if I approached her or if she approached me, but we did talk outside after the meeting. She asked me more or less if I was somebody who could sponsor other people going through this. I expressed that I probably was not qualified. I did have the amount of time under my belt, but had not done the proper work to really be a good sponsor. However, I did give her my advice on the best way to approach getting sober. And there are so many opinions out there about the best way to go about these things, and there is no one prescribed way that works for everyone. But over the years, I have learned with myself, family, with friends, with strangers. I'm pretty open about this sort of stuff, and a lot of people do come to me asking for help. I have learned that, for one, nobody's gonna get sober until they feel motivated to. Bottom line, you gotta feel shitty enough that you're willing to do anything to stop feeling so bad. And I more or less told this girl that. She asked, I'm thinking about quitting drinking. How do I do it? And I told her, quite frankly, well, for one, you have to really know you want it. And the method that I think is the smartest, what worked for me, what's worked for a lot of people I know, is when you get to that point where you're so desperate to change, check yourself into a detox program, get the substances out of your body safely and, quite frankly, with minimal discomfort. That's one thing I really love about detox. And then go full force into AA. Even if it's awkward at first, it is awkward. It's weird at first, I think, for just about everyone. But that was kind of my prescription for her and for a lot of people who ask me for help. You have to be ready and invested. You have to detox carefully, and you have to throw yourself into a program of recovery. And it's a very simple approach, but it has to happen at a very specific time. So I knew that I couldn't push this girl. I could not try to give her the one-woman show that is a presentation of what sobriety looks like. Of course, I live as an example, but I could only tell her what worked for me, what I think could possibly work for her, and maybe a snippet of what she can look forward to. And we said we would keep in touch, just kind of like honestly how things usually go in AA when we trade phone numbers. We always say we're going to stay in touch, and some alcoholics are really, really good about staying in touch with all the people that they trade numbers with, but I'm not. I admit that. I also didn't want to push this girl too hard. But on my 7-year anniversary, there was a moment there where my heart broke for this girl, seeing her going through something that I knew so personally, but then having hope for her and having the teeniest bit of joy that this person who is struggling with this disease is at least taking the step to go out and sit through a meeting, which is not something I would have voluntarily done before I got sober. And then I never really heard from her after that. Kind of just said a prayer for her and really hoped that that sobriety date would come for her soon. Fast forward to today, say around 2 o'clock, having an okay day and that wave of anxiety hitting me. I hop on the treadmill, decide to get moving at a pretty fast pace. Nothing crazy strenuous, but nothing too easy at the same time, especially considering how I was feeling. And I saw these text messages coming through on my phone from a number that I hadn't saved. And I saw a preview for one of them that said, "Hey Alicia, do you know of any detox programs in DC?" And I thought this could be a number of people. This could be an old friend. This could be a family member of an ex or an old friend. Because people in my life know that this is something very important to me and that I might have some answers. I don't know. But I wanted to wait until the end of my workout before I checked any of my text messages. I try to do that. So that I can kind of just focus on my workout and whatever podcast I'm listening to and trying to text. That's not important. The point is that as I got off the treadmill, still feeling anxious, kind of upset that the workout didn't get all of that fire and energy out of my body, I read these text messages and found that it was this young woman from a meeting over 4 months ago asking for help finding a detox program, because she remembered me saying that what I think works best is detox and AA. So I told her what I knew. I told her where I got sober. I offered to go with her to the ER. I talked up the benefits of going as soon as possible and not worrying about work. And I don't have an update. That's kind of where we left off, but I am hopeful. The point is that I prayed for a miracle at a time where I could only think about how I was feeling, because I was consumed with depression. I mean, and that happens to the best of us. And here I was presented with an opportunity to help somebody who was in a place where I was once so desperate to get out of. And one thing I've learned from rehab, AA, 12-step, whatever you want to call this whole program, is that that is the exact antidote to a shitty day. The opportunity to help another person can feel so selfishly satisfying, but in the best way. I would urge anybody who might see this, who may go through something difficult like that, don't hesitate to ask for help, because when you ask for help, you are transferring power to another person to allow them to do something impactful. And that actually does a lot for another person. And you both benefit from this exchange of humanity. And so here I am. I don't know how I'm gonna feel tomorrow. I'm trying to have faith that this isn't my forever. I'm getting established with a psychiatrist so that I can get a better handle on my medication management, which I am stating way too late in this video that I have a therapist. I go regularly, and I mentioned my primary care physician as well. My therapist and my doctor both feel that I need a stronger hold on my medication management with the psychiatrist, which has to be contributing to why I'm feeling the way I am. So I'm holding on to faith that I won't have crappy days every day for the rest of my life. This isn't my forever. Tonight, while I was feeling pretty good, just kind of exhausted from this day, I wanted to hit record and just talk, let it off my chest. And who knows, this might help me to have more better days. Maybe it can help somebody else have a better day. I don't know. But I think it's important that we share these experiences, because it's important not to feel alone. It's important not to think that you're crazy for experiencing these things. And here I am trying to put a moral on this story, and I know that every time I tell a story, that's what I try to do, is let's pull some wisdom out of this. And I don't necessarily need to do that. It's just where I am right now, and that's okay. And my hope is that I can make more of these videos, these diary style videos, and have better news as time goes on, and to probably share more of my story, because there's a lot up here. And now I'm rambling, don't know how to end this. So I really mean this when I say it. If you are a person who's watching this who is not me, thank you so much for listening to me talking through how I've been feeling lately. Please shoot me a note if you know me, or drop me a comment and let me know if this is anything you've ever gone through before. I realized that I did not look at the camera like at all throughout this video, and it's has a lot less to do with my poor conversational skills, which sometimes I have for some reason, I don't know. But more because I'm trying to dive into this massive pool that is my mind and my memories, sifting through and trying to find those specifically related to anxiety, depression, addiction, how those all play together, and trying to figure out how to organize these memories into thoughts and then translate those into words in a cohesive narrative. And without notes, it was kind of tough, honestly, but it's all good. Glad I got through it. If you watched to the end, I'm glad you got through it. I hope you got through it. But yeah, thanks so much for watching. Bye.